This is The Drive with Dale Lolley and Matt Williamson on your 24/7 home of the black and gold. SNR, Steelers Nation Radio.
And welcome to The Drive. It is a Monday here in Pittsburgh, a chilly Monday in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, very chilly.
Last week's...
we were at my aunt and uncle's yesterday eating lunch outside and stuff. It was beautiful. Right.
And the range came in, a low front, and here we are. Chilly.
Yep. Football weather.
Football weather, and not much.
Not a lot of action, though.
Not a lot of action around the league other than some guys signing. We'll get to the signings and all that stuff later. I wanted to start today's show off, Matt. One of the things that I heard a lot of over the weekend and in recent weeks, period, is that the Steelers have mangled their quarterback situation. Haven't had a plan in place since Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger even said they have no quarterback plan. Let's rewind on this. First of all, Ben Roethlisberger saying that the Steelers had no quarterback plan is kind of revisionist history because Ben Roethlisberger is the reason they had no quarterback plan in place.
For better and worse.
For better or worse.
Yeah. The fact that he was so good was the reason they didn't have to have a plan for a long time.
And not only that, but when they actually drafted a quarterback who he saw as a challenge, he shut the guy out, Mason Rudolph.
Who was a third-round pick, and he was not really a challenge.
So in 2013, Ben Roethlisberger was 31 years old.
Okay.
They draft Landry Jones in the fourth round.
Yeah, not threatening.
Not threatening. Landry Jones was not threatening Ben Roethlisberger's spot as number one quarterback, and you weren't necessarily looking for that.
No, you weren't looking for the next guy. But fourth-round picks are not the next guy.
What they did, though, is they were moving on. With Ben now 31, you didn't need the Charlie Batch or the Byron Leftwich or guys like that.
He was already the adult in the room.
He's now the older guy.
He didn't need the mentor.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't need the mentor.
What you want's a cheap backup.
Right.
Because he's expensive.
Right, which is what they did.
Which is Landry Jones.
Yeah, which is what they did there. In 2017, Landry Jones' contract is basically running out here.
And contrary to popular belief, that's a successful pick.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a fine backup for, league minimum, give or take. All right, that's not a bad pick.
In 2017, they draft Josh Dobbs in the fourth round. They then follow that up in
20. Same thought. Yeah.
Try
and
to
Dobbs is still in the league, and he's doing okay,
2018, they draft Mason Rudolph. Kevin Colbert then comes out and said, we liked him. We had a first-round grade on him.
I bet Kevin regrets saying that because it's also too much pressure on Rudolph. First-round grade can be a very great statement,
very vast,
by the way. Yeah, that's way different than he's a blue-chip talent. He's a franchise quarterback. He's a top 15 type of pick.
For example, in that particular year, you had five quarterbacks drafted ahead of Mason Rudolph. Doesn't mean that the Steelers...
Is that the Darnold year?
That's Darnold. You have Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, Josh Rosen, Lamar Jackson, and then Mason Rudolph, who went pick 76.
5 first-rounders, then a gap, and then him.
Now, if you're not in a draft where the quarterback has that kind of depth to it, Mason Rudolph probably doesn't go 76th overall.
Right.
Because five teams took quarterbacks in the first round.
Right.
They're not taking two.
If he comes out the Pickett year, he's competing with Ritter or whoever to be the second guy taken, and wherever that lands. Right.
So I could see if they had, again, a first-round grade, you could have 45 guys in a particular draft with quote-unquote first-round grades.
Right. And how often do we talk about how there's 14 players in this draft that are pure first-round grades?
Right.
Promise Rudolph wasn't one
of those guys.
Right.
But he's probably one of those guys that had a 1-2 next to his name.
Right. He's in the next batch.
Maybe goes 50 or 60 deep.
And plus the position he plays carries weight too. Right. Yeah.
So
he might have been in their top 32.
He could have been.
He could have been. If you're looking for a quarterback.
And just because those other quarterbacks all went in the top where they went, that doesn't mean they had Josh Rosen with a first-round grade.
Right.
They may have had Rudolph ranked ahead of Josh Rosen.
Like even look at last year's class. There were 6 in the top, 12 or 13? Super high.
Yeah.
Nothing in the second round, and then there's a big gap until the next one. Because to your point, the teams that drafted one isn't going to go back-to-back.
Yeah, the teams that needed quarterbacks went and got their quarterbacks.
The playoff teams weren't. They were looking for linemen or whatever else they needed. And that happens a lot.
So they did that. At that point,
which is somewhat of a plan,
right?
That's sort of straddling the line of franchise guy. I mean, that's not trading up in the first round to get one, But it's taking a legit swing.
But in 2018, I said Ben Roethlisberger's 36 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Roethlisberger that season led the NFL with 5,129 passing yards, led the NFL in pass attempts and pass completions, threw 34 touchdown passes, which was his career high.
Which, oh, by the way, at this point, they're winning a lot of games, and a safety is going to help you more than a project quarterback.
Exactly.
I mean, you're trying to win now. You're pushing that's their version of pushing their chips in, which is different than the Browns trading for Watson or the Saints maxing out their credit cards. But you're in it to win now. Your quarterback is playing very, really well.
But you know the end is
the end is near. You don't know his elbow's about to get injured, but
in 2019, as you mentioned, he starts the first 2 games, blows his elbow up. They get through that season 8-8 with Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2020,
that's Mason's second year in the league.
Yeah. The 2020 draft, you had Joe Burrow went number 1 overall.
Mm-hmm.
Tua Tagovailoa went 5th overall. Justin Herbert went 6th. Jordan Love was 26th. Jalen Hurts was in the second round.
Early second round, I think, yeah.
He went 53rd. It wasn't the early second.
They didn't trade up for him, okay.
But if you remember, the Steelers had made the trade for Minka Fitzpatrick.
Correct, right.
Now, even if they don't make the trade for Minka Fitzpatrick, they probably go at least 6-10 that year.
Probably, right.
So they're not going to they're not going to be in the hunt to draft Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, or Justin Herbert.
Unless they decide now's the time to push all your chips in and trade up. But I don't know if
they didn't have a first-round pick that year because they had
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying
made the deal for Minka Fitzpatrick,
right?
Which they saw, and as we explained at the time, you had a player who in the previous year you had a top 5 in the top 5 guys on your draft board,
and he was super cost controlled. You didn't have to pay his bonus. You
basically got him as a rookie.
You had NFL tape to evaluate too, which is a lot better than Bama tape. Right?
Yeah. So they made the deal. Okay. Now, could they have, if they don't make that deal, they could have taken Jordan Love.
Yeah,
but,
that's what I mean. If they didn't make the deal, maybe they loved Herbert and they trade future first to get to 6 or something like that. If the Chargers are not also in love with Herbert.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you also have to get there. You could have taken Love, who took 5 years to develop, by the way.
Wasn't an immediate starter.
He was Southern Utah.
You could have taken Jalen Hurts in the second round. Instead, they took Chase Claypool. But Hurts wasn't an immediate starter either.
No, they had Wentz. I mean, it was a big-time quarterback at the time. I mean, that was kind of like taking Milroe now.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
it's a projection for down the road.
We were all shocked when they turned in the card for Hurts.
Yeah.
And it's worked out, but it's taken a while, too.
So they get through that, and you had Roethlisberger coming back at 38, but that year he threw 3,800 yards and 33 touchdown passes.
He's still good.
He was still a good player.
Right.
The following season, he's now 39, 2021, and if you want to look at that 2021 draft, that was Trevor Lawrence 1 overall. That was Zach Wilson 2 overall.
Yeah.
That was Trey Lance 3 overall. Justin Fields went 11th, and Mac Jones went 15th.
Which is turning into a pretty terrible draft.
Right. The guys drafted after that were Kyle Trask in the second round, Kellen Mond in the third round, Davis Mills in the third round, Ian Book in the fourth round, and Sam Ellinger in the sixth round.
And from my recollection, that draft class was being talked about like last year's draft class was. Rare, 5 first-rounder types, Bad, though.
If you look at it in terms of the overall depth, 10 quarterbacks drafted is one of the lower numbers of quarterbacks drafted.
But 5 first.
Yeah.
Who did the Steelers take in the first round that year, and where did they pick?
2021 was Najee Harris.
Okay. I mean, those guys
were
all
at
long
20,
gone,
21? So those guys – 24, I'm sorry,
24.
So, those guys are long gone at that point. And so they go into that 2021 season. Again, Roethlisberger's coming off a season in which he threw for 3,800 yards and 33 touchdowns. So they said, okay, we're going to discuss this with Ben. Ben's right. We want Ben to take a pay cut. We don't know that he's that guy anymore, which proved to be correct.
Right. Which is a touchy subject for any Hall of Fame quarterback at the end of their road.
Yeah.
I mean, like the Eli stuff with the Giants wasn't pretty at the end, and there's no right answer. You don't just kick them out the door.
Right.
You know?
They won 12 games in 2020.
Yeah. I mean, they're a contender, right?
Right. Now the next season they go 9-7 as their starter.
Mm-hmm.
It's obvious that he can't throw the ball like he used to. He still threw 3,700 yards.
So that's Najee's rookie
passes.
year when there are a lot of dump offs and balls coming out quick. Yeah.
And so they go into the 2022 draft and they say, okay, we got to get a quarterback. Ben's done. In what turned out to be a bad quarterback draft. Now, you can revisionist history says, well, Kenny Pickett was a third-round pick. No, Kenny Pickett was graded as a first-round pick. Go back and look at the NFL.com stuff. It's all out there on the internet. Look and see where Lance Zierlein had Kenny Pickett compared to, I think we talked about this at the Combine, his grade was, 6.40, which is comparable to any of the quarterbacks in this draft. Actually, it's better than the quarterbacks in this draft.
Then a couple of them, right? Yeah, I'm sure.
That's just
now. There's some bad luck that the year you pretty much have to get a quarterback is the worst quarterback class out there. So I mean, you have less to pick from. If he's the only one that does have a first round grade, that doesn't mean you take Ritter or what I mean. And frankly, and this is just fact too, I wonder how many quarterbacks in the last 15 years that were picked from pick 15 to 25, we'll say, have worked out. It's a pretty low hit rate. I mean, the top guys go earlier than that. So, okay, you took a swing and it didn't work. That doesn't mean you have a plan. You missed on a guy. Yeah. That happens a lot in that range.
Yeah. And even the next year, let's say they had.
You're not going to draft on the year after.
Let's say they hadn't drafted Pickett, and they waited until the next year. They played out that season with Mitch Trubisky as their quarterback and Mason Rudolph as the backup. Well, the next year in 2023 is Bryce Young 1 overall. C.J. Stroud goes 2 overall. The third quarterback taken is Anthony Richardson at 4.
I'd say they're all really early.
Yuck.
I mean, they're all early.
Then you got Will Levis at pick 33. Then we're looking at Hendon Hooker and Jake Haener, Stetson Bennett, Aiden O'Connell, Clayton Tune, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Sean Clifford, Jaron Hall, Tanner McKee, Max Dugan.
So that class, you weren't going to get in the top 4 for any of those top 3.
No.
I mean, there's no way. That's way too far to go. And I don't think any of us, even at the time, thought that would have been worth it. I mean, for what you'd have to pay. You'd have to be future first and a lot of other stuff. Now, what you could have done, and then everyone out there would be even more critical, is you could have passed on Joey Porter Jr. and taken Levis. And and would you be happy with that, folks?
Well, even
you know what I mean?
Think about some of the quarterbacks, for example, in that 2021 offseason, when they were talking about what quarterback should the Steelers go out there and sign. What was out there was worse than what's out there now.
Or was out there this offseason,
this offseason.
Is that the Trubisky year that signed?
That was Trubisky.
Yeah.
I
remember Winston, Mariota, and Trubisky were our favorites. Right.
Seriously wanted the Steelers to go out and sign Jameis Winston as their next quarter. Is there?
I did. I mean, I thought those 3 at that time. My favorite was Winston. My second was Trubisky. My third was Mariota. None of whom I think are the next Ben, but those were the options.
That was what
I
you're
liked
dealing
Winston
with.
better than those guys.
So if you're not going to be able to get one of those guys in the draft where you're picking at here, and you're not going to be able to get a guy who's,
Right. And now everyone listens, well, you should lose every game and put yourself in a position to lose that. That's not happening. Get over that.
Nor should it. That's
not the answer. Right. So that's basically the way the timeline went. I mean, maybe there was a trade to be had somewhere with another team. I don't know. In that stretch. But
even in 2023, I mean, signing Derek Carr the answer? No.
Would you be in a light years better shape? Of course not.
It is what it is.
Given Cousins a year ago $70 million or whatever. And,
no.
Right. That is not the answer. Right.
No. So I mean, you have to get yourself into position, and last year's draft looks great. The 2024 draft.
It does.
But we don't know yet.
I mean, subject to change. Stroud looked amazing 365 days ago.
Right.
And I still think he's going to be a really good player, but he doesn't look as good. It wouldn't shock me if Jaden Daniels takes a slight step backwards or whatever. I'd love to dip my toe in last year's quarterback class, but I also wanted to tackle too.
Yeah, right.
Where do you get those?
But those 5 guys I went in the top 10, 6 in the top 12.
Yeah.
And Bo Nix had a great rookie year. But that was largely because of the scheme that he went to.
Yeah, like I'm a Bo Nix fan. I wasn't coming out, and I think a lot of it's where he landed. But would you be? I mean, are they a Super Bowl team right now with Nix? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Right. I mean, if you took,
like, I know for a fact they liked Michael Penix, but he went 8th overall.
Yeah.
Like
the Raiders liked him too, but
yeah,
he was
the
gone
Raiders.
before. Right, he wasn't getting past Vegas.
Right.
The answer is there isn't really an answer, and this offseason's messy. I mean, that's pretty clear.
This offseason, you knew going into this because the quarterback class is not great in the draft. What's out there in free agency isn't, knock your socks off. There's no Joe Burrow's not becoming a free agent.
No. I mean,
that you have to figure things out. You got to find the right dance partner.
Now, they did some of this, and it's something you and I have harped on since we've done the drive. Maybe if you took one in the 4th round every year, somebody would be there that you'd be happy with.
Right.
You know what I mean? Now, you would have lost some other starters in the meantime, and maybe some 4th rounders didn't hit either, and there'd be some wasted picks. Could they have drafted more quarterbacks in the last 10 years? Maybe.
Here's the thing, though. Because of the way the draft now goes, like, I can run through some of these late-round quarterbacks.
Most of them are terrible.
Most of them are awful.
Right. I mean, if it's Dak Prescott, great. You were the one that hit the lottery, you know.
But the way quarterbacks now get drafted in the NFL,
they get pushed up.
They get
if you have any kind of trades,
people,
right?
People are talking about the Mississippi kid right now. Like, he might go in the 1st round. I'm like, based on what?
Yeah, because he's got traits. I mean, that's the thing. You know, Richardson at 4. I mean, these guys that just have traits that they think can be superheroes.
It's just gone crazy here. And, some of these, 2022 draft. Well, we won't look at that one. 2021. After Mac Jones, it was Kyle Trask, Kellen Mond, Davis Mills, Ian Book, Sam Ellinger.
Right.
2020.
If you took a flyer on any of those, they probably aren't even on the team.
After Hurts got taken at pick 53, Jacob Eason, James Morgan, Jake Fromm, Jake Luton, Cole McDonald, Ben DiNucci, Tommy Stevens, Nate Staley. Most of these guys.
Purdy's probably the only one in the last 5 years that's been a late pick that's hit.
2019. After Drew Lock went at pick 42, Will Greer, Ryan Finley, Jared Stidham, Easton Stick, Clayton Thornton, Gardner Minshew, Trace McSorley.
Terrible.
That's like 4 years of guys there, and Minshew's the only one that's even like,
making money or desirable in any way. Right. And I don't want to go into the season with Minshew.
No.
The Raiders were very happy to make that change.
Absolutely.
They traded for Geno Smith, right.
But this is what you're looking at when you don't get those guys. I mean, outside of Purdy, the last time a late-round quarterback hit.
Probably Dak.
I'm looking. And
that's 10 years ago.
I'm looking. I mean,
even turned into a legit starter. Not even like
Dak Prescott in 2016.
Yeah. He was what, a 5th rounder or 6th?
He was a 4th.
4th.
135th pick in the draft.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was a year you had Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, Paxton Lynch went in the 1st round. Christian Hackenberg went at 51.
So the rookies and second-year guys, their story's not written. Maybe somebody emerges. But more or less in the last decade, there's been 2 starters drafted on day 3 or, even mid-rounds. I mean, 2.
2.
Purdy and Dak.
That's it.
Right. And I don't know that either one of them gets you over the Mahomes hump.
And even when you look at
I don't let that have rings all over their fingers now.
When you look at the second-round quarterbacks in that time, the Hackenbergs.
I'd say there's some rough ones.
I mean, Deshaun Kaiser.
Yeah.
You can talk about, the Steelers should have taken Jalen Hurts. It's a second-round quarterback. There's one of those guys that have hit in the last decade,
right?
Basically.
I mean, Derek Carr goes back to the Manziel. He's had a good career, but he's not going to the Hall of Fame,
right?
I mean, he's not winning Super Bowls.
Yeah,
it's really difficult.
So you got to pick your spot, and you can't control what's in the draft. And so maybe next year is a great year for quarterbacks. Again, we don't know at this time.
Yeah, I say,
we won't
assuming
know,
it is crazy.
Yeah, we won't know until November of next year. Like, oh yeah, that's a pretty good class.
Right.
Like, oh, I've now seen all these guys play. Like, people are assuming Arch Manning is going to be good. Arch Manning started like 2 games in college.
Right.
Just because his last name is Manning. If his last name was Arch Williamson, nobody would be talking about him.
Right. I guess there are some other prospects, but don't pretend like you know, and some of them will stay in and make $5 million at Texas next year, or whatever. Too. Why bother? You know?
The idea is to make yourself as good a team as possible right now,
and which is happening with the comp picks and the cap space. When you decide you fall in love with one, now I got the tools to go pounce,
right?
You know, and that could happen at any point.
That's not having a plan. That's dealing with the reality.
Yeah, I'm putting money in the bank to when the best deal on the car comes down. Wow, they're selling Lamborghini. There's been a Lamborghini coming off the line forever. We're one of the few teams that can afford one.
Yeah, you know? And the revisionist history, for example, on Lamar Jackson, getting that pick. Well, you know, they got Lamar Jackson at the end of the first round. But yeah, they also drafted a tight end. They, being the Ravens, drafted a tight end before they took Lamar Jackson.
Right.
Traded back into the first round to get him.
And that's a great move. I mean, it's a great move.
But if they thought he was going to be Lamar Jackson, they'd take him with the first damn pick and not taking Hayden Hurst.
Of course. And some of it is luck, too. I mean, the year you needed one was the worst quarterback draft we've seen in a while.
There's that.
And they're not going to pick first overall, but I was going to say the year since he was taking one first overall.
It happened to be Burrow.
It happened to be a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Who probably would have been good no matter where he went.
But I also mocked in 2018, I put out a mock draft a week before the draft where I had the Steelers taking Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
And I got skewered.
Oh, I'm sure.
Skewered.
I'm sure. He's a running back.
He can't play. He's not a quarterback. He's not a quarterback. Now everybody saw they should have taken Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
Which is it, folks? Because if you were one of those people who were skewering me back then, I don't want to hear from you.
Right. No, he was not exactly a popular pick.
No.
That guy can't play.
Even people in Baltimore weren't real happy about it. We got Joe Flacco.
They thought that was a wasted pick. Yeah. That's when Harbaugh was on the hot seat.
Absolutely.
Times were different back then. Right.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
They took a tight end a 26-year-old tight end in the first round.
And
before they took Jackson.
Right, exactly. I don't know. I don't have a whole lot else to add except for it's just hard. I mean, you got to keep taking bites at the apple. There's got to be apples to bite.
Right. That's the thing.
That's the problem. There's not many apples.
If the apples are all little shriveled up things at the end of the
yet,
fall, like you're like, I'm hungry. I got to eat something. I guess I'll eat that. It's not going to taste great.
And the year you're definitely biting an apple, there was a drought.
Right.
It's like, you know.
Yeah.
So no, in the meantime, you've been to the playoffs.
Right.
I mean, it's be the fifth year in a row. I mean, I can understand where Ben or a national analyst would say they don't have a plan. Well, that's not how I'd phrase it. But at least if you have a new starter 5 years in a row.
Tell me what the plan should have been.
Right.
Like
other
right
than,
now.
Boy, you should have taken Dak Prescott in the third round then because you knew he was great. You know, like.
Yeah. Let's also remember Dak Prescott, who the Steelers also liked.
Yeah.
Had a DUI right before.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right before. I think it was right before the draft.
He's also a lot better pro than college player in terms of accuracy and all those things.
So there's some of that.
And he doesn't have any rings either.
Yeah.
Cowboy fans aren't happy with him or them either. Right.
Anyways.
Our team doesn't win anything either. You know.
Let's get to a break. I'm Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson. This is The Drive on the Steelers Audio Network. Matt and I will be back with more right after this. And welcome back to The Drive. I am Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson. And Matt, over the weekend, the Cincinnati Bengals coming to terms with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on new contracts. Chase gets 4 years, $161 million, which includes $112 million guaranteed.
Wow.
And Higgins gets 4 years, $115 million, in which the first 2 years are guaranteed. The Bengals are intent on continuing to be the Bengals. I'm not saying that they're wrong to lock those two players up. They're both great players.
Yeah.
But the thing that we've heard basically since the second quarter of the Super Bowl is you got to win in the trenches.
You're right. They're not taking that approach.
They're not. They're taking a completely different approach.
They are. There's a lot of layers to this, and from where they sit now, I would have done the same thing. Now, what if the troubled receiver Burton they drafted in the third round from Bama? Whoa, we got a dude.
Yeah. I think that changes the
perception.
perception.
That would change everything, right. I mean, then I think
as it turned out, because
trade Higgins or whatever.
They took the wrong dude.
Right. I mean, they took a character risk.
They took a risk. Well, he's a first-round type guy, but he had all this off-the-field stuff. When we're talking off-the-field stuff with him,
It was drastic. He was a first-round player.
Comparing that troubled player to say, George Pickens, night and day.
Right.
This is a guy who couldn't be bothered to go to a team meeting in the team hotel that he was staying in.
I think he got kicked out of 2 schools, too.
He got kicked out of 2 schools.
Long track record, right?
There's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah. Now, that's not the only mistake. I had no problem taking that bite in the apple. That wasn't in the first round.
But they've been known to roll the dice on troubled guys, character guys.
More so than most teams.
Yeah.
Now, I would have signed both those receivers, and frankly, I don't even care about the money because there's too much money in the NFL right now, and I don't even know how to value contracts at this point because cap goes up, and everyone's contracts are noticeably more than the one ahead of them. So, fine, it's a lot of money. And I understand keeping those 3 together. I mean, that's what you do well. You are basically a close to 500 team, all based off of that.
Right.
And if I can get my defense, now here's where I go off the road with them, is if I can get my defense to slightly below average or in the average neighborhood, we're probably a 10-plus win team with Joe and his buddies.
Their biggest addition there is bringing in Al Golden.
Right.
And replacing Lou Anarumo, who 2 years ago, Lou Anarumo was being lauded.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's the guy that went in and shut down Mahomes in Kansas City and gave them a chance to win that game.
Yeah. So my homework I've done on that side of the ball, which totally adds up, is first off, I don't know that Hendrickson can now come back. Who knows?
They're saying they're trying to do that.
I know they're trying. And to the Bengals' credit, they actually do spend money on their own. They do it their own way, and they are a mom-and-pop organization by NFL standards, but they're not cheap. I mean, these guys are making good money.
Yeah.
Now, as for Marumo, it's pretty clear that the team thinks we gave you good prospects, you didn't turn them into good players. So we're going to take the easy road here and fire him as opposed to 11 players. Maybe they're right. But 2 years ago, he was pretty well sought after and was pretty smart 2 years ago.
He wasn't on the open market long either.
He wasn't on the open market long. I don't know. He got dumb all of a sudden. I don't know a ton about Golden, except for he has an extensive college background. He rotates a lot of players. There's a very NFL-type scheme at Notre Dame. He seems like a good hire. Maybe he can deal with these young guys that they've missed on better than the old curmudgeon. Maybe. But you look at their defense on paper, it's flat out bad. I mean, it's like the worst
Al
in the
Golden
league.
is 55 years old, too.
I know.
Let's not pretend he's not an old curmudgeon.
Exactly. But, I mean, he's just dealt with college kids and, the younger defensive players he's going to deal with. Now, I have a real problem. It's a small thing, but don't double down and sign Gesicki. To me,
that's where
that's
rail.
an error because you can find him in the 3rd round of every draft. An athletic tight end that can run that doesn't block anybody. Those guys exist everywhere, and this draft has 6 of them. So if you need that guy, don't invest your money in that. Give that to a starting outside linebacker or whatever. That's one starter on defense you could have had. I kind of get it in that in Burrow we trust, and I know there's some people out there going, well, if Burrow's that good, he should turn Yoshivas into a 80-catch guy.
He should.
And maybe he would. Who knows? I mean, opposite Chase. Now, I also think, and I'm not usually a big believer in this sort of thing, but in this case, too, I do want to keep my star quarterback happy. I mean, he's by far the biggest asset in this organization, and he's making a strong case to keep his 2 dudes. We gave them to him. Those 3 are doing their job times 10. Let's keep good mojo in the locker room. Let's keep our most important guys happy as possible. And he's going to bite and scratch for you, which he always does. Now, if they spend money on a running back or something like that, I mean, that's another critical error. In the end, though, do they have a better chance of winning the Super Bowl now than they did 2 weeks ago?
No.
I mean, they don't. It's kind of just status quo, and hopefully they find defensive players.
Al Golden has never been a coordinator in the NFL.
Right.
Now, he's coordinated at the collegiate level the last few years. He was a coordinator at Virginia for a few years.
Yeah. He's got a good reputation, but he's a college guy.
He was also, at one point, a tight ends coach.
Oh, was he?
In the NFL.
Okay.
At
least he's been in the league, but that's a different world.
And he was a linebackers coach for the Bengals. But it's kind of an unknown. Adjusting to the NFL, even if you've been there, is night and day difference as a play caller.
Look what happened in Seattle. They hire Washington's offensive coordinator, and he's running college stuff, and it's a disaster.
It's a disaster.
It's
like,
a disaster.
Typically, when those college guys have made a big jump up like that, that hasn't worked.
Rarely. I mean, it's somewhat of a different game. I mean, it's a slightly different football with different hash marks, with way different protection schemes and things like that. I tell a story all the time. It's not even like a secret. But when I hosted that podcast with Ross Tucker, Ross had been in the league for a while, and he eventually goes to Washington.
Yeah.
And Spurrier's the big hire. And he's like, boy, he's got a lot of energy. You could tell he's been around a winner. He's like, as an offensive lineman, he's like, he had no clue about NFL protections. And the opponents figured that out real quick. You know, you can't just have 3 protections.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like these college guys, they can get away with that stuff, especially if you're in a big-time program with really good players, like the Florida Gators. You know?
And given what the Bengals are going to be spending on their defense, his defense at Notre Dame might have been higher paid.
Or more talented. Right. Maybe we want to transfer those guys. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know what their answer is either. I mean, I'm not sure what I'd have done differently other than the Gesicki move, because I would have given the receivers their money. But it's still going to be an uphill climb to build a defense. And, oh, by the way, the O-line is not great either on the interior.
Yeah.
You know, Burrow's going to get hit, and, you know,
So,
I don't know if they're much better.
I applaud them for spending and keeping guys I didn't think they'd be able to keep, and that's great. But at the end of the day, I mean,
I don't know if they're better.
They tried to have a plan in place so they didn't have to sign Higgins. That's why they drafted Josivis. That's why they drafted Burton.
Right. They're hoping to hit gold with one of them.
Yeah. And
knowing
it
it
didn't work out.
All. Right. You knew Chase was never going anywhere.
Right. You weren't he's going to probably be a Bengal for life.
Yeah.
At least until
as long as him and Burrow are good. Right.
But yeah, so it also goes to show to me what this free agent class was kind of like.
I almost said the same thing, but I thought it was going to be a way bigger discussion. Look at the 32 teams, and I understand there's some listeners and some Steeler people that are underwhelmed with this free agent haul so far. The Metcalf's a little bit different situation. How many teams are really better now than they were when the season ended? 3? 4? You know, like the Patriots are one of them, but they have $100 million under the cap still. They can't even spend their money.
Yeah.
Like the Chargers tried. Who are they going to spend it on? You know, like, are they going to give Amari Cooper more than he should just so they have a receiver? Like, I don't know. I mean, the Vikings, I think, are a better team. The Bears are a better team.
I heard an interesting thing about that the other day. I was listening to Jim Miller and Pat Kerwin on Sirius, and Kerwin said that the teams that have spent the most money in free agency year by year, this goes back several years.
I bet they have a bad record.
The team that spent the most in free agency has averaged and has getting better by 3 wins.
Okay. It's good, not great.
But if you're, for example, the
They're
Patriots,
number one, right?
The Patriots this year, well, they got nowhere to go but up.
They're going to win more games.
And
this year than last
if
year,
I'm
right.
if I'm Robert Kraft and I'm looking at this and I'm going, okay, I just spent $270 million in real money.
In real money, right? Dollars out of my pocket.
And it's going to get me to 6 wins?
Right. I mean, an off season from now, I better be in the position
I'm going to spend $60 million per win?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, if I'm in his shoes, I'm going to understand that Rome wasn't built in a day. This is not a good roster. And if you're sitting here at this time next year and be like, we don't have any real defensive needs. We built that. We took care of that in year 1 of the rebuild with Vrabel. Cool. And May's in his 3rd year. He's starting to elevate people. Then I'm excited. But if we're hitting our head on 6 wins and that's the best we can do and I'm just throwing money at nothing, what's that get you?
fired.
Yeah.
If you're the GM, it gets you fired.
I do urge people, and I actually am going to do it. What teams now have a better chance to win the Super Bowl than they did when the season ended, give or take? Not really many. I mean, that are better football teams.
Yeah.
And I know the Steelers don't have a quarterback, but Metcalf makes you better in that regard.
Makes you better.
I mean, that in itself. I mean, their quarterback situation is not as good.
Darius Slay makes you better.
Makes you better, right. They upgraded to 2 positions. Is it the most overwhelming free agency class ever? No. But, I mean, the other 3 teams in the division aren't better than they were.
And I mean, I understand that there were defensive tackles out there that people wanted and would have helped this team. At the same time, not into paying Milton Williams $27 million.
No, like Jonathan Allen would have been.
He was still $20 million.
Yeah,
I'm not paying him $20 million.
All these guys are so
at
expensive.
age 31.
The other
I'm
thing
not paying him
is,
twice what I was paying Ogunjobi, basically.
and some of it's timing too. Like if you knew, which we don't even now, Rodgers and Wilson aren't going to be Steelers. You're going to roll with Rudolph in a draft pick.
Which is, folks, that's not going to happen.
I don't
it's
think
not
that's
going to
happen
happen
either. Then you would have maybe spent 20 on Allen. You know, like
Right.
you had to have something set aside for quarterback, which
Right.
is still set aside.
You still have more money set aside for quarterback than the other teams who are in this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You have more money than the Giants. You have more money than the Vikings. So as much as those, the Vikings, I believe, would have to do something with their cap
To get Rodgers.
to get
under
Rodgers.
it. Yeah.
That's why it's not going to happen.
They signed 2 defensive tackles, a center and a guard.
They
and,
spent all their money,
Right, yeah, right.
and still.
And I even said they're better than they. I think they have a better chance to win the Super Bowl now. But
I
I don't know.
don't.
I don't know if McCarthy's as good as Darnold.
That's
was
why I
last
don't know.
year.
That's why I
Right,
don't
right,
think that they have a better chance right now. That's
they're
what
way better
that's
in the lines of scrimmage.
the
but,
question that they're asking themselves right now. Are okay? We like McCarthy.
Mhm.
We took him 10th overall last year. Do we like him that much? Are we going to hand him the keys to this Ferrari?
Right now, with what we have, if we threw Rodgers on here, maybe we do. Then you have a better chance.
But
than
then
last year. Right?
you just use the 10th overall pick on McCarthy,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like,
and you'll be done with year 2, and you don't know if
You don't know if he can play or not.
Right. You don't know anything. And the whole plan all along was let's build a team around a rookie contract,
right.
which gets
So we can spend on all these other things.
Right? Justin Jefferson's going to be expensive,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. Right? I don't know. I mean, like you look at the Niners, they're not close to as good as they were. I mean, I'm not sure how many teams are better. And I thought the Chargers would take a big step forward. I mean, they're throwing to Mike Williams as their number 2 receiver right now. Right?
It wasn't a great. We knew this going in.
It was a bad offseason.
There just teams weren't letting their own guys go.
No, I mean you're going to sign Stingley today. I mean, like the guys that are good are going to get paid
They're
by their
gonna
own
get paid
team
better.
now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, TJ's going to get another. I mean, those guys don't hit free agency anymore. Milton Williams is the best defense player in the market. He's fine. I mean,
Now he's being paid like he's the best defensive tackle in the league.
yeah, right.
Which he's not.
And frankly, if he wasn't on a Super Bowl team, he may not even hit the market. I mean, if he would have been on the Bears or something, they probably would have just re-upped him a year ago and never even got to this point. I mean, the Eagles didn't. They have plenty of reinforcements. They knew they couldn't keep him. You know, like going shopping on free agency market when the cap going up like crazy just means people are going to stay with their teams.
And the thing is, and this kind of goes back to what we just talked about in the previous segment, don't upset your financial apple cart.
Mm-hmm.
Don't spend a bunch of money just to spend a bunch of money.
Right.
Spend money wisely because
That's the Jacksonville move. Then
next
you cut
year,
him in a year, right?
you don't have the Steelers don't have a ton of expenditures going into future years.
Right.
Well, don't do that now because you want to set yourself up to be able to get the quarterback.
Yeah. And like I've even heard, and I don't know what they're going to do with George Pickens, but well, how could they possibly pay George Pickens now? They could pay him anything they want.
Right.
I mean, they could pay him no matter. I mean, paying guys is not a problem.
You think the
It's just
cap's not going up another $30 million next year?
Exactly. You
At
could-
least
you could
25?
extend him right now if he felt was
Yeah.
comfortable doing it. I mean, money's not a problem. They're another team that's got a lot under the cap right now. It's not like the Patriots, but you can.
They also have more better players than the Patriots.
Right.
Like
I mean,
who
when
on the
Porter's
Patriots
up,
roster would you like?
when Porter's up, they're not going to lose them. You know,
Right.
like those type of dudes. Right. Keep drafting well and don't let them ever hit the market. Your 2 tackles. If they're good, you're not going to lose them.
Right.
That's where the
Anyways.
league is right now.
Let's get to another break. He is the Matt Williamson. I am Dale Lolley. You're listening to The Drive here on the Steelers Audio Network. Matt and I will be back with more right after this. And we are back. I am Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson. And Matt, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but every team right now, we knew this, owns their first round
Which
pick.
is really weird, yeah.
It's beyond really weird because this is the latest that has happened since 1993.
No, I didn't know that part. That's pretty bonkers to me. It's weird because I had a conversation on our podcast today about all these teams want to trade back. Well, who's trading up? You know?
Yeah.
I mean, we couldn't come up with many names or players to trade up for. I keep thinking maybe the offensive linemen are going. The mocks don't have enough linemen going as high as they're going to go.
Right.
Because, with all respect,
Dan
to Dan
Moore just got
and Jalen Moore, right?
more than $20 million a year.
Right.
These guys are like offensive linemen are needed. There are other teams out there who didn't get Dan Moore who need offensive tackles.
Right. They're unhappy about it.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I were talking off the air, like Connerly from Oregon. Good prospect, pure tackle, has the arm length, the height, the athleticism. He's got work to do, but everyone mocks him at 25 to Houston or whatever. He might go 6.
Yeah.
Because where else am I going to get one? You know, capologists are going to, money guys are going to go to the owner and go to the GM and be like, if we don't take a tackle, we're not going to get one. I don't care where he's ranked on our board. It's the same conversation as quarterbacks.
Yeah, there just aren't. And in this year's draft, I know we've been doing our draft series on Steelers.com, the Triple Take. You need to check that out if you haven't.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't the high-end, can't-miss prospects at offensive tackle in this draft.
Nothing like
and
last
there's only so many guys in this draft. Like, there are people in last year's draft who thought Troy Fautanu, well, he might be a guard, strictly because of his height.
Mm-hmm.
His arm length was fantastic.
It's great. Right.
Great. It's ideal arm length for a tackle.
Yep.
But, well, he's not. He's a half an inch too short to be.
Mm-hmm.
No, he's a tackle. And in this year's draft, he would be a top 10 pick.
I was about to say I think he goes 4, maybe 5. Like the Patriots, I think would take him over Membo, or definitely over Campbell. I mean, because he's a tackle,
and he's the same height as those guys basically.
Right. And he moves just as well, if not better.
But they've got like 32-inch arms,
yeah,
or 33-inch arms. He's got 34-plus-inch arms.
I mean, the guys that there's no questions about. Alt, he's in contention for 1 or 2 overall. I mean, if Dan Moore's worth $20 million, isn't Joe Alt worth the 2nd pick in the draft? Or if Dan Moore's worth $20 million, isn't Connerly worth the 8th pick in the draft?
Yeah.
Where else am I going to get him?
And I think what we could see in the draft is some movement with those kind of guys.
Maybe.
Especially
if there were more tackles. Like if Simmons could show that he's healthy, that'd go a long way.
But I think teams might be willing to take that swing at those guys because while I look at this prospect, let's say Campbell, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it doesn't work out, I'm going to move him to guard. Well, the 5th-year option on that is
a problem.
Yeah.
He
might be a great guard.
Yeah, it's a Linderbaum conversation.
But do I want to pay him 3 years from now when his 5th-year option comes due? At that point, it's going to be $30 million. No,
right. Probably more. When Alt breaks the bank at that point, and Sewell's already making 35 or whatever. The best tackles in the league, whoever they are at the time.
I can't pick that 5th-year option up on those guys.
The other counter argument, your 5th-year option's dead on. But are we going to see more guards going high just because you can't get them either? I mean, there's such an O-line shortage. And then the other argument, too.
Well, then you may see teams actually push, and the NFLPA would never sign on. The NFLPA loves a 5th-year option where the guards and centers get paid like they're offensive tackles because that's more money for their guys. But teams might start looking at this going, well, I can't pay. We can't continue. We have to break this down even more so.
That should have happened last CBA. When is the new CBA? Do you know?
2030.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't soon, but yeah. There's another argument. Like, we're doing a mock draft tomorrow, Triple Take on the air, and I did my 32 teams, and I didn't mean it to go this way, but I only had 2 wide receivers going in the first round. I don't love the receiver class as a basic, and I looked at a lot of teams. They'll take an edge. They'll take a shot on a lineman. But if Jamar Chase is making 40. Isn't Luther Burden worth the 20th pick? You know what I mean? I mean, a guy that's not close, but I mean, they're spending.
I don't know.
I'm trying to figure out the economics of free agency and how it affects the draft. I mean, that's kind of what's been on my head.
I don't know that it affects the wide receivers because
it's not like tackles where they don't exist.
They don't exist.
Right.
And you need, 64 offensive tackles have to play. You can find receivers.
And there's 10 offensive linemen on every team.
Yeah.
Too. I mean. Even a center is not the easiest thing to find to block Chris Jones.
But wide receivers, I mean, this year's the outlier.
Yeah.
Like every year over the last decade, we go, this is a really good receiver draft.
Right.
This year it's, okay, Tet McMillan, he ran a 4.48 by some metrics today.
He did today? I didn't know when his.
But then I see people come out, well, you got to realize that 4.48 that he ran at Arizona State or Arizona, that translates to low 4.5s
in
Indy.
Yeah, and they do have conversions for this stuff now.
Yeah.
And was it outdoors?
So don't look at Ted McMillan sub 4.5.
That was one thing I was going to say. Is there's the Will Johnsons and McMillans and all these pro days that could change their stock dramatically. If Will Johnson runs a 4.44 as opposed to a 4.54, probably a big deal. What's Mason Graham's height and weight, and what's he look like, and some of these guys, but none of them should change that drastically.
They're not drastically.
Right.
The cornerback position in this year's draft, and I just did my rankings today for that. There are so many guys in this year's cornerback class that have something wrong or missed time.
Oh, yeah.
Especially at the top of the board, it's like that's going to be the one because those guys get paid too, a lot of money. And
I like the day 2 corners because it mitigates the risk, but they all have a risk.
There's something there. This guy had a knee. This guy, missed. He had a shoulder.
That feels like the whole draft to me.
Yeah.
I mean, all the receivers, they're okay, but there's something wrong with them.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Like, where do you think, like, Adunze was the 3rd receiver off the board? I bet that guy's like...
He'd be number 1 in this year.
Easily. And I think he's a
if we don't consider
pick.
Travis Hunter,
right.
To me, Hunter's a cornerback.
He's his own deal to me. But, like, he's like the Fautanu conversation. Like, those guys are top 5 picks this year. You don't get them at 10, 14, 15, 16. No. That's not even close. And I know what we do for a living is fun, and I love talking about the offseason as much as I do game day. This offseason is pretty bad in terms of
it's a rough one. The
resources.
Draft isn't great, and the free agency wasn't great.
Yeah. I mean, the guys that were shopped for trade or Cooper Kupp and Debo and have all these things wrong with them or old or, I mean, it's a bad year to improve.
Yeah.
The worst I can remember by 1,000.
Yeah, it's been rough.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's going to do it for the first hour of the drive here on the Steelers Audio Network. Matt and I will be back with hour number 2 right after this. And we are back. I am Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson. Welcome back to hour number 2 of the drive here on the Steelers Audio Network. And Matt, it's a Monday mock draft.
Okay, been a little while. Let's do it.
We
dig in.
We'll slow down a little bit here in the mock. Maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday, something like that. But let's do it. We're working on the pro
football.
football.
To become draft season in a hurry, though.
Very much so.
Right. It's not that far away.
ProFootballNetwork.com mock draft simulator here, just to change it up a little bit. And we're down to pick 21. We got 3 trade offers. New Orleans wants to give us picks 40 and 50.
Wow, how would we consider that?
Initially thought, I don't want, but that's
not bad. It might not be
bad.
that different than what you're picking from.
It's not that bad.
Something to consider, yeah.
I'm not going to reject it straight up. The Chargers are offering pick 22 and 86 for pick 21 and 156.
That's like free money.
Yeah.
Unless they're going to take your guy.
Right. And the Jets are offering 42, 73, next year's 2nd and next year's 5th for
I'd
pick
love
21.
the Jets next year's 2nd, but they got a bevy in next year's. Steelers have a bevy in next year's.
I mean, I'd like to get back into that 2nd round
this year
if possible.
40 and 50 is kind of intriguing.
40 and 50 is kind of intriguing.
The Chargers one's kind of dumb. I mean, to move up 1 pick, I mean, I kind of feel like we should dismiss those trades. They never happen in the
That's
real
not going to
world.
happen.
Yeah, right. I mean, what's the chances they have to have our pick? Who do they want so bad?
But this is so I'm back to the Saints offer of picks 40 and 50 for 21 and 229.
I don't dislike it.
I'm kind of inclined to take that one.
Let's just do it because we haven't.
Yeah.
I don't even want to ask who's there at the moment. Let's just do it because we haven't and see what that looks like.
Let's see what that looks like.
Okay.
And it might be something you look at and go, yeah, I'd definitely do that.
So we'd have 3 seconds?
No, we don't have 3 seconds. We have 2 seconds.
Right.
Which is the whole reason why I'm interested in getting a pick in that 2nd round. I don't want to miss out on some of the stuff.
We have 4 day 2 picks.
Yeah.
2 and 2.
Yeah. Okay, we're not going to trade again here.
No, let's hang at 40.
Yeah. So I'm going to reject both of those trade offers. At 39, we just missed out on Amari and Hampton.
I would have ran the podium.
We also just missed out on Kenneth Grant. He went 37th, which is kind of crazy to me.
Which is, in the real world, if we would have made that trade, I'm calling guys.
We might have been trying to get back up.
I would have called the guys after Thursday. All day, all night, try to get to the 1st or 2nd pick in the draft.
Okay, so the players available here for us at 40. Tyleik Williams.
That wouldn't be bad.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the bonus prize, right?
Defensive tackle out of Ohio State. Benjamin Morrison, cornerback out of Notre Dame. Ariante Ursary, offensive tackle out of Minnesota. Cameron Williams, offensive tackle out of Texas. Trey Harris, wide receiver, Ole Miss. Jalen Milroe, quarterback out of Alabama. Jackson Dart, quarterback out of Ole Miss. Josh Connerly is still there, offensive tackle out of Oregon. I want to look specifically at defense here first.
Okay.
So the defensive tackles available, you're looking at Tyleek Williams, T.J. Sanders, Darius Alexander, Alfred Collins.
I was going to ask about Alexander.
Deone Walker, Omar Norman-Lott, Shamar Turner, Josh Farmer. Okay.
It wouldn't break my heart to go D-tackle here.
No, I hear you.
Yeah.
I just want to take a look at the running backs available. Caleb Johnson, Quinshon Junkins, Travion Henderson, DJ Giddens, Cameron Scatabo.
Okay. So, I mean, I think between those two positions, we're going to get something at 40 and 50 we like.
Yeah.
What's the best way to juggle it?
That's the question.
Right.
Which is going to get us, I think right now, I would lean running back, defensive tackle.
See, I was looking at it differently. If I had to take a D tackle here, I think I'd take Alexander over Williams.
Yes. Because I'll find a nose.
The third round noses will be great.
Yeah, I'll find a nose.
So I think Williams is
I agree.
off the
That's not the worst.
I mean, if you really wanted to nerd out, and I know it doesn't quite work on this, I would look at a draft and be like, how many running back landing spots are there? Because there's 2 or 3 we like.
Yeah.
Are the chances they get scooped up between 40 and 50 that great? I don't know. I'd be pretty happy with Alexander. I don't love the chances of him getting to 50.
I don't love it either. That's a good point by you. Okay. So you want to take Alexander?
We might be unhappy with both Ohio State guys falling off the board is the concern. But Johnson's there too, right?
Yeah.
I'm not as big on him, but okay. I mean, I think if either Ohio State running backs are at 50, we're pretty happy right?
About
I
it,
mean,
yeah.
that's the goal.
Yeah.
All right, let's take Alexander, then.
Taking Alexander. Okay. And we're now up at 50. And all 3 running backs still there. Caleb Johnson, Quinshon Junkins, Travion Henderson.
Johnson's my third choice.
I probably like Judkins the best just because he brings you a little something different than what you have. But they could also be, I mean, they brought in Wright last week from
We've talked a
Tennessee.
lot about is their mold changing. Maybe not.
But Judkins doesn't.
But Judkins pretty good no matter what.
He doesn't change that for me because he can get to the edge. He can do those kind of things.
I'd prefer Judkins as well.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Judkins is the pick.
Now we got 2/3.
No, we got 1/3.
Correct.
Okay. We are now up.
Now, at this point, I don't think there's a position you have to have, but a nose could be attractive.
Quarterback would
be something I'd look at. A project tackle that might be a guard or whatever would be something I'm interested in. Would you consider corner? Be kind of low on the list.
Lower on the list. I think you have some needs that you need to fill in here. Jalen Milroe is there. T.J. Sanders is there, but you've already taken an end.
Yeah, I don't think that's a plan.
Alfred Collins is there.
I'm fine with that.
Jared Wilson, the center out of Georgia.
Yeah.
Shamar Turner, defensive tackle out of Texas A&M. Latham Ramson, safety out of Ohio State. Ashton Gillette and Josiah Stewart, edge rushers out of Louisville and Michigan. Gunnar Helm, tight end out of Texas. Holland Pierce, offensive tackle out of Rutgers. DJ Giddens, running back out of K-State.
If we would have lost out on the Ohio State guys, I'd be fine.
Quinn Ewers is there. Jordan Birch, the edge rusher out of Oregon.
I think you take Collins.
I think you take Collins.
Yeah. That's a nice infusion of talent on your D-line.
You just got a lot better up front, or a lot younger, and certainly
trade down kind of made that happen.
Collins might be your day one starter at nose tackle.
Oh, yeah. Real good chance.
Yeah.
No, sign me up for that.
All right.
2 huge
Pick
talented players.
Yeah.
Right?
And you've now mined from the strength of the draft.
Mm-hmm. Now it's bonus prizes.
Yeah.
You know?
All right, we're up at
one. Got your back, and you got your 2 D linemen.
We're up at 123. Quinn Ewers is there.
Didn't do much for
I'm going to take a look at the quarterbacks available. Ewers is there. Dylan Gabriel is there. Tyler Shuck is there. Riley Leonard is there. Kyle McCord, Curtis Rourke.
I take Shuck time to thought. We have the same conversation
I know.
every week. Yeah, I mean, I don't think he'll be there. We could take him. What other positions are available, or what are some of what's like the tackle
look at the
situation?
wide receivers.
What's the wideouts are an interesting.
Ricky
one too.
White out of UNLV. Pat Bryant out of Illinois. Nick Nash out of San Jose State, I should say. Theo Weiss Jr., Kobe Hudson. I don't love this guy.
No, it's not great at all.
Offensive tackles, you're looking at Logan Brown out of Kansas, Chase Lunt out of UConn, Charles Grant out of William & Mary,
All those guys are
Trey
intriguing.
Wittig out of Indiana.
I like the first three. Again, tackles don't grow on trees, and they turn into comp picks when they leave. Of course, I'd take Shuck, but we can't have that conversation every day of every day. Who do you like?
I kind of like Grant, but
Of the tackles, he's my favorite.
yeah.
You don't need anything from him this year, probably.
And maybe he lines up for you as an extra tight end.
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
he's winds up playing some guard for you.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? But
No, talented tackles are something every team should just grab no matter what.
okay, Charles Grant, offensive tackle out of William & Mary, it is. We are up next at 156.
A lot of big people.
Yes. And again, building through the trenches.
Yeah.
All right, now we are up at 156. Riley Leonard is there. Kyle McCord is there. Curtis Rourke is there. Max Brosmer, Brady Cook. Those are your quarterbacks.
Rourke's probably my favorite, but several of those would fit the bill.
The thing with Rourke, I don't know if the medicals are going to show.
It could be bad.
Could be bad.
It could be bad. But we won't know that until draft day, probably.
Nick Nash is still there at wide receiver. Theo Weiss, Kobe Hudson, Antoine Wells Jr.
How about a defensive back?
Let me see here. Cornerbacks, you're looking at Tommy Hill out of Nebraska,
Yeah.
Jabbar Muhammad out of Oregon, Noel Williams out of Cal, Upton Stout out of Western Kentucky. I kind of like Upton Stout.
I'm going to say Stouts I'm a fan of. I don't think Eccles means you don't go, that you're done at slot necessarily.
Yeah, because Eccles can play
He
outside.
can do both, right?
I could take 2 bites out of that apple and try to
He'll
really
be a
improve
demon
that.
on special teams,
Yeah.
too. That's my favorite name so far.
I think you take Upton Stout out of Western Kentucky.
Mhm.
He's kind of like Mike Hilton, young Mike Hilton.
Real tough, right? Safety
Except
background,
he runs
too.
better.
Oh, yeah, he's faster, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm fine with that.
All right, we got another pick at 185. This is our final pick. So if we're going to take a quarterback, we got to do it here.
And if we don't, we don't.
Well, we should. Kyle McCord, Curtis Rourke, Max Brosmer, Brady Cook, Cam Miller out of North Dakota State, and Donovan Smith out of Houston.
Those top 2 or 3 would all be fine with me. I mean, I don't know what to think in terms of, like, just because they signed Mason Rudolph, does that not mean they don't want running quarterbacks anymore? I don't think that's true, but the fact that they did sign Mason Rudolph makes me think maybe they'd be fine with McCord. He rips it over the middle, and he had a good year.
Well, there's also, you can look at it this way, too. The fact that they signed Mason Rudolph means you have the time to deal with Rourke's injury stuff. If he's medically okay.
Great point, right.
You don't have to play him right
He's
away.
inactive for time being.
The only problem I have with it is he's at the earliest doesn't get on the field until training camp.
Yeah. I mean, he could be bad medicals.
It could be you just eat the year, period.
Mm-hmm. Which isn't ideal.
Yeah.
But those are the 2 names to me, is McCord or Rourke. I think I like Rourke better.
I like Rourke better as well.
I do too, yeah.
All right, let's take Rourke. We can afford to wait because we got Mason Rudolph in the field.
Mm-hmm. We're assuming Mason's a 2 in this exercise, by the way. I like it. I like the D tackle situation.
It actually worked out pretty well. So we ended up getting, with the trade down, to 40 and 50 for 21 in our last pick. Darius Alexander at 40, defensive tackle out of Toledo. At 50, we took Quinshaw Junkins, the running back out of Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
At 83, Alfred Collins, nose tackle out of Texas. Had some good history with nose tackles out of Texas.
Yeah, I didn't think of that.
There you go. At 123, we took Charles Grant, offensive lineman out of William & Mary. If he turns into a guard, that's fine.
Whatever, right.
But we've just added depth to our defensive line, our offensive line.
Grab those guys when you can.
156, we took Upton Stout.
He'll play.
He'll play somewhere, and he's going to be a demon on special teams. And then at 185, we took Curtis Rourke, the quarterback out of Indiana.
The quarterback and tackle, we'll see what happens down the road, but those are positions you can't find ever outside the organization,
Again, when defensive tackles are going $15 to $20 million a year on the open market, to $26 million a year on the open market, taking
those guys,
taking two of them in a draft that's just riddled with them.
And I think those
makes a
two
lot of
players
sense.
fit the Steeler mold in terms of physicality and size and strength and that type of thing too. They're not finesse type guys.
Here's the thing too, with Alexander, because I'm now not paying the premium first round 50-year option on him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care till he's 24.
No, I don't really either. Yeah,
I can still get 2 contracts out of him playing that position.
Yeah.
As
Keep
opposed
him till
to
he's 30, 31
yeah,
if he's a hit, something
as
like
opposed to having to pick up his 50-year option when he's 27, 28 years old.
Mm-hmm. Which might prohibit you from doing it.
Right.
Who knows if he has a couple injuries between now and then or whatever. I mean, the league's not kind to people.
Yeah.
I like the line infusion.
I don't mind giving up the 50-year option possibility.
It's such a rare thing anyways. I mean, it's not Jamar Chase coming out or Penei Sewell.
Yeah.
I mean, the chances that if you'd have stuck with your original pick, that you did pick up the 5th-year option, who knows?
I just want to look here and see who did
Saints
New Orleans came up to get, and they moved up to get Matthew Golden. Okay, I can see that.
What was their first pick?
They took Nick Scourton.
Okay. I mean, they need both. They need everything.
I can see that.
Yeah. And Golden would be fine, but the Steelers weren't going to be in that market right now.
Yeah. The defensive tackles drafted after that.
I know Grant went in the 2nd round.
Yeah. Colston Loveland went to the Chargers. Egbika went to the Packers. Siobhan Revell at 24 to the Vikings. Jahdae Barron at 25 to the 49ers, who traded back up into the first round. Donovan Ezereko to the Rams. Walter Nolan to the Ravens. I don't love that. Derek Harmon goes at 28 to the Lions. Mike Green to the Commanders. Edge rusher at Marshall. Geod Campbell to the Bills at 30, the linebacker out of Alabama. Gray Zabel goes to the Chiefs at 31. And Donovan Jackson, the guard from Ohio State, goes to the Eagles.
There was a lot of good players when we were on the board.
Yeah.
I like the trade down experiment, though, with picking up 2 seconds. It's kind of fun.
Yeah. I didn't know I didn't realize the Saints have 2 seconds. But
I didn't either. I don't know who did they trade to make that happen. I don't remember.
I don't recall either.
Lattimore probably.
Oh, there you go.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That
makes some sense. So they could be a team that
they're always aggressive to move.
It's going to try to get into that.
Whether they should
they've
be
had
or
years
not.
when they've had 2 draft picks because they've been so aggressive.
Yeah, I think they average like 4.5 picks over the last 5 years. It's the lowest in the league.
Yeah.
They trade up for Penning, and after taking
with what they're doing, we're going to try to win again.
They and I do not see football the same way, but they see it a very distinct way, and they don't ever differ from it.
Yeah.
It's aggressive.
I could understand a team, to your point before about the wide receivers, wanting to get back into the first round to get a wide receiver.
Yeah. I mean, Ibuka or one of these type of guys, I don't think Golden gets out of the first round after running as well as he did.
But just
I don't know how many are going to go in the first.
Yeah, some of the offensive tackles. I mean, the top 3 offensive tackles went in the top 10.
That including Campbell.
That's Banks and Campbell and Membo all went top 10. Tyler Booker went 12.
For all the reasons we talked about, Banks screams like a guy that could get overdrafted.
Yeah.
Because of the position he plays. I'm not even saying he's bad, but I could see on draft day, like, wow, he went 7th overall. I'm like, okay. I mean, I get it, but I don't think he has super high upside.
Yeah. No, I hear you. But, yeah, it's interesting. Just a little different approach to that one. To having, again, I would love to be able to get back into the second round somehow.
There's a lot of
without trading George Pickens.
Right. How do you do that other than trade back in round 1?
Right.
I mean, that's the process.
Yeah.
So it was so weird to me last year.
So, I mean, if you look at it that way, too, you got DK Metcalf, Darius Alexander, Quinshawn Judkins, Alfred Collins, Charles Grant. Stout,
he's definitely part of this draft.
Yeah.
You gave a second-round pick directly for him.
Right.
It was so weird to me last year when the Texans traded out of, like, the early 20s way before the draft, not knowing exactly what was going to be there.
Usually that happens draft day.
Would you consider now? Like the Saints called you and said, we'll give you 40 and 50 for 20, or for the Steelers pick. Would you do it way ahead of time?
I don't think that they would do it at this point.
You'd kick yourself like crazy.
Yeah.
Saying, man, our favorite 19 that could have went off the board.
Typically, you only do that to trade into the first round or trade or do that kind of thing if you're in the market to get a quarterback.
Yeah, which is what the Vikings were doing at the time. I just didn't understand why Houston did it last year.
The same thing that 49ers did when they moved up to get, as it turned out, Lance.
Yeah, they were just – I think the Eagles did that the Wentz year too. They just kept trading up and packaging up, going up to the draft.
It's really tough to do that on draft day.
It is to make all those moves. Yeah.
So
I don't know. Someone blew my doors off, though, and said, we'll give you 2 pretty nice picks.
But they're not going to do it to move up to now for a wide receiver that they don't know if he's going to be there or not.
Right. There'd have to be a team trying to get up to a quarterback.
Yeah.
I don't know who that is this year. It's different than last year.
Yeah. I could see somebody wanting to trade into the end of the first round while the draft is going on. We got to go get Jackson Dart, or we got to go get Sean
I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that. Yeah. Especially if Sanders goes real early. Then all of a sudden it's like, think if by chance it goes Ward, Sanders, and you're the Giants sitting there.
You're not waiting till the top of the second round.
No way. I mean, you took Hunter or Carter or whatever, and you're fine, but your owner's like, where's the quarterback?
Right.
And you're
we
sitting there
get a quarterback.
With the 35th pick. I'm calling the Steelers and making that Dart or whatever.
Everybody from 20 down. I'm on the phones trying to work
all
that.
Those playoff teams, right? I mean, especially if Dart's this much higher than everybody else or whatever, you kind of have to. They're in a bind.
Yeah,
they have to get a quarterback. And I don't know if Titans are open for business. I tend to think they're not.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the Giants are in a pickle. Giants and Browns could really overpay for quarterbacks this year.
Yeah,
because they have to.
Anyways, let's get to a break. That's our latest mock draft. Tomorrow we'll do some more rankings, that kind of stuff. But let's get to a break. He is the Matt Williamson. I'm Dale Lolley. You're listening to The Drive here on the Steelers Audio Network. And, of course, you can hear The Drive every Monday through Friday right here on these very airwaves. You can also download the Steelers mobile app and get it there, along with our triple take videos and all that good stuff. And
tackles went up today, right?
Yes.
I think so, yeah.
Yep. And, you can also check out our YouTube page. Give us a thumbs up on there. That goes over well, apparently, as far as the algorithms and everything goes. Let everybody know, and you can leave your comments on there. But we're going to get to a break. We'll be back with more right after this. And welcome back. I am Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson. And we got a little news here. While we were talking draft, the Steelers went out and have agreed to terms with former Chiefs and Browns safety Juan Thornhill to add to the equation.
I think he was a second-round pick of the Chiefs.
Yes.
We were talking about it slightly just before we hit record here for the segment. Really good tester, explosive, vertical, very versatile in terms of slot, deep middle, too high. Not the biggest, roughest, strong safety body type, but real fluid. It's a nice pickup. I mean, that's your third safety. Like, I don't think he's going to challenge those top two to be a starter, but you could do a lot of different packages. He could play the deep middle when Minka comes down or whatever. I like the pickup a lot.
Yeah, 6 foot 205, ran a 4.42 at his combine.
He has long arms
with a 44-inch vertical.
Yeah, it's crazy.
11.9 in the broad jump.
Wow.
And he still did 21 reps on the bench.
Has
played
he's a specimen, right?
Played a lot of free safety over the years, in addition to also coming down and playing slot, more so with the Chiefs than he did with the Browns in the slot, yeah.
The Browns, like the Steelers, are a pretty predominant single high defense more than most teams. So many teams are playing cover two high shells. These two are two that don't. So I think he's much more Minka than Elliott in terms of usage. I'm not saying he's as good as Minka. I mean, I think people get my drift here, that he's in the typical 3 cover high, 3 shell. He's probably your middle guy more often than not. Big nickel's something they've kind of gotten away from, mostly because their linebackers are better now than they used to be. Not that they couldn't play big nickel, but now you can with the third. You can make the argument that he's one of your best 15 defensive players or so, that he could get serious rotation.
Yeah, I think he's an upgrade over KZ for sure.
For sure.
in that regard.
Way different athlete.
A way different athlete,
Body
different
type.
sized athlete that gives you the potential to be both your strong and your free. He did play a year of strong safety in Kansas City as well.
Way better length. And
Yeah.
they look like different people coming in, I'm sure.
And he gives you a guy that, if, against a lot of these teams that line up with their tight end in the slot, well, now you got
and the Jokus of the world.
you got two
and
guys
Andrews.
capable of handling those
Gesicki,
and still keeping Minka back deep.
obvious connection to the division, too. He's played against all these guys. He understands what Lamar is. He understands what Burrow is. I mean, there's something to be said for that. I like it. I mean,
He also, I assume, has a pretty good understanding what Mahomes is.
Yeah, probably, too. Yeah, absolutely.
Practicing against him for 4 years.
Yeah, so I like it. It also kind of eliminates a draft need. Maybe needs a strength, but I always thought they might take.
Well, if we'd have known that going into what we just did, maybe we don't take Upton Stout.
Maybe not. Like you got the two smaller slot type guys in Beanie and Eccles, and you got your bigger one now in Thornhill or Minka,
Right.
depending on what you show. So they might be. Are they done at defensive back? I think Watts being out there is kind of important too.
I think they might be.
I mean, if
think they might
anything,
be.
maybe it's just an outside corner you're shocked is there in the 5th round that you had a 3rd round grade on. That's about
Other than
all I
that,
can say,
yeah.
right?
And again,
Which means their back 7's done.
this is what the Steelers do every single year.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it might not be the flashiest signings or anything like that.
Right.
But
People didn't think Elliott was the flashiest sign.
Right.
People,
People, right. He was just a
he
throwaway.
was okay, right?
It
whatever.
was all about the Queen signing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this year it's been all about, DK Metcalf and, Darius Slay.
What are they doing at quarterback? And right.
What are they doing at defensive tackle? They'll figure that out in the draft, but they typically set themselves up so that they don't have to go in to the draft. We got to take this. We got to take that early.
As we talk through this, just looking at like the final roster defensively, and they came to agreement with the defensive tackle from New England too, but I don't think
He's a rotational piece.
I don't think that's a Lowry, that's a Wormley. I mean, he's fine. I'm not saying he's not a good player, but if you could add 2 D tackles in your draft and everything else is offense, I think that's about all you need now. I mean, in terms of filling out my defensive depth chart, I'd love to add a nose and another defensive tackle.
Yeah.
Okay, and maybe that's lessened a little with the signing yesterday, but that doesn't move the needle on me.
For example, over the weekend, the Titans cut a Woozier.
Yeah.
Who's a good NFL cornerback.
I would sniff around.
They just signed him last year.
He was worth a lot last year. Now all of a sudden he's
he's not. There might be a defensive tackle cut loose here in the next couple of weeks, or again, for Woozier, it was like, okay, they signed him. I think he played like 7 or 8 games and was hurt.
Yeah.
So they said, okay, we're going to move on.
This
guy, while he was hurt, who's the defensive? I don't know who the defensive tackles
but
are
there
out
will
there,
be a name.
but there will be somebody
there
out there.
Is. Grady Jarrett got cut. He got picked up by the Bears the next day. There's always, at every position, not really quarterback, but I mean, someone that's worth being on a roster and helping a good team will pop up.
Yeah.
But they may not even need it. I mean, it might be 2 draft picks.
And the thing is we're now past that opening wave of free agency where, as I said earlier, it's like if I'm in Target, which is a fine store.
Sure.
I like Target. I like what they got in there. There's nice stuff. Oh. I can buy clothes at Target or whatever and be perfectly happy for them.
Yeah.
But when I'm at Target, I don't want to pay Macy's prices.
Right. Yeah, and I don't want to buy this.
I don't want to buy this $30 jacket for $60 or $100. I want to buy it for $30. That's why I'm at Target.
Yeah, I want to buy kitty litter at Target.
Yeah.
And bananas over there.
It's a fine store.
Right, yeah.
I'm not ripping on Target at all. I do lots of shopping there. There's one right by my house. I'm there all the time.
The Williamson families spend a lot of money at Target, right? No
but
question.
I don't want to. I don't want to buy my $100 jacket there and expect it. Well, this is a really nice $100. Oh, it's not such a nice $100 jacket.
Not so great, right? It's what we paid for, right?
Yeah,
and that is kind of free agency this year in particular, and most years. But not at this point. I mean, I don't know what's going on with quarterback. I don't know what Rodgers is going to cost or Wilson or any of those dudes. It's a different beast. But teams plucking the Thornhills of the world up now are usually pretty happy with it. I know what he does. I'm going to pay him what I want to pay him, not what his agent wanted to pay him a week ago. And I got to roll for him.
And for the players that are out there right now,
Now you're a little worried.
These guys are starting to go, okay, the seats are starting to get taken here. I'm walking around the chairs. I'm walking around the chairs. The music's still playing. Right. But at some point it's going to turn off, and then what?
And you sign a 1-year deal, and I'll roll the dice next year.
Yeah.
It adds up to me.
That was the other thing, and he does a great job of tracking this stuff. But, when I'm listening to Miller and
they on top
Irwin
of it?
last night, and he's talking about all the guys signing. He says after that opening salvo of free agency, you're going to see a bunch of guys sign 1-year deals because they're going to play in the league this year.
Yeah.
But the guys who got the 4 years at $26 million or whatever, all right, those were the big ticket items. Now these are the guys that are going to play in the league, but they just want another year in the league.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Get a paycheck, a nice paycheck.
Yeah.
By human standards, maybe not what you expected. Those 4-year deals, they're never going to see the end of them anyway.
Never.
But they pounce on them. Good for them. They get the big bonus. They get guaranteed money. This is what most NFL players do.
Yeah.
Like you've said this a bunch the last couple of weeks. There's still 500 unemployed NFL players or whatever. You go through every roster.
The Juan Thornhill's out there who's been a starter his entire career. He's played in 87 career games. 74 of them are starts. He is a starting caliber player.
Second-round pick.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, this guy's a big-time athlete.
He'll be coming here not to be a starter.
Right.
But to be a key backup. KZ played a lot of snaps for them last year.
I mean, heaven forbid you lose Minka.
Right.
I mean, it's like we got to change the whole defense.
Now you got to do that can do that. If for example you get into that game late in the year and Elliott is out, which is what happened to them.
Or remember the safeties and the linebackers they rolled out 2 years ago.
Stuff happens.
It's a long year and it's a war of attrition.
Now it's very much like the Lowry signing a year ago, where you got a guy coming off your bench now who's got 90-plus career starts, and it's like he's not going to be overwhelmed going into this situation.
I know exactly who he is. Right?
Yeah. Juan Thornhill, if he has to start, they have a situation like they had last year where they're down, 5 defensive starters in that second matchup down in Baltimore. They were missing 5 starters in that game.
Yeah. That's what the league is.
Yeah. And
he would have been like, oh, okay, I played Baltimore twice a year for the last couple of years.
I'm ready to step right in. Not that KZ wasn't.
No,
but this is a better player.
I think it's a better player.
This is a better player.
I assume he's younger than KZ too at this
He's
stage.
29 right now.
Okay, yeah, it makes sense.
So,
and I would think, who knows, but I think you're going to keep those 3: Killebrew, Watts. It's a pretty good safety room.
It's a good safety room.
A real good safety room, right?
One of the better safety rooms in the league.
Yeah, no question.
I mean, honestly, if you're adding a Juan Thornhill and you're not expecting him to start, he's your third safety.
Yeah.
And your fourth safety is a 2-time All-Pro on special teams. You got your number 1 safety is a multi-time All-Pro player.
Right, top guy.
You might have the best safety room in the league.
It's really strong. I was sitting there thinking, I almost didn't say it, but whenever you went down that road, I'm like, I bet Thornhill's still a top 32 safety. That a lot of teams would think he's one of their top 2.
Yeah.
And he's your 3. And again, I wouldn't mind seeing a little more big nickel, but you can only put 11 on the field too.
Yeah. I mean, he'll play 400 to 500 snaps this year. They'll find ways to get him on the field
easily. Yeah, I think. Let alone if there's injury.
Yeah,
you hope it's only that number.
Right.
But people get hurt.
I mean, if everything's right, Minka's playing over 1,000 snaps.
I mean, think about him again. I'm just spitballing, but if you have Wilson, Queen, and those 3 safeties on the field, that's a lot of middle of the field speed compared to what they used to play with in the middle of the field.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a big problem for a long time. I mean, you're not crossers and play action and that kind of stuff. You should be really good against that stuff.
The interesting thing here is that Thornhill in his first 4 seasons had 8 interceptions when he was in Kansas City.
Okay.
The last 2 years with the Browns, none.
I don't know what to make of it. I mean,
I just
different environments.
Yeah, whether it was the way they were using him. As I mentioned, Kansas City used him more in the slot, and then free safety as well, where
I mean,
he's taking the ball away.
He's been on some good Browns defenses, especially 2 years ago.
2 years ago in 2023, and was a good player for them.
I mean, I'm thinking obviously the difference is Kansas City played a lot more leads than the Browns during his stint. The Chiefs and Steelers are the best teams in the league getting their hands on batted passes, and that always leads to picks. And probably more than anything, it's luck. I don't think he got bad at picking the ball off.
No, we talked about it with Minka.
Right.
Like, okay,
it's a hard thing to count on.
Yeah.
The interception leader every year is usually a corner that gets thrown at over and over who isn't very good,
Anyways.
No, I like the pickup.
So that's the latest Steelers signing here. And again, there's going to be more of these type of deals happening here. Again, maybe they're 1-year deals, but again, I like doing the 1-year deals.
I'm not sure what positions you're looking at now. Like, I really think the back seven's done.
I could see another offensive tackle.
Yeah,
on a
tackle.
A 1-year deal who's a guy with some starting experience that.
I'm going to get kind of crazy, but what if Amari Cooper or Stephon Diggs or some is still sitting out there a week from now and wants to sign a 1-year deal and be like, we'll figure out something to do with you. I mean, it's not going to be a quarterback. It's not going to be a running back.
I think offensively, I think I need to figure out, before I have more skill position players, I think I need to know what I'm doing at quarterback first.
I also wouldn't mind the Herbig replacement type guy,
that
too.
guy, yeah. That's why offensive line, to me, just adding another offensive lineman to the mix who's played in NFL games.
And they won't be superstars at this stage, but they'll be gritty, tough guys.
Guys who've been in the league 5 or 6 years, they've started 20 games.
And going back to O-line, the more you sign these Thornhills, the more you get the William and Mary tackle in the 3rd round.
You open yourself up for that, too. Yeah. I don't have to take a 4th-round safety now because that spot's filled. Now I can take a flyer.
I use my cap money for the bird in the hand, and now I'm going to just draft O-lineman, even if I don't need them, because everyone in the world needs them.
Yeah. We talked about it last year during camp that, they got 11 offensive linemen here that are NFL players. Mm-hmm. Well, they'll probably only keep 9 or 10. Could they trade one of them? Well, as it turned out, Herbig gets hurt in camp.
Right.
And you had a rash of injuries early in the season. You're signing guys off the street because that's the way that goes.
I mean, 2 or 3 more moves like this, or maybe not even that many, that 4th-round guard is sitting there that you can't believe is, maybe that's the McCormick. Yeah. You might take a McCormick this year that we've never taken in our mocks because the roster wasn't filled out yet. And
where you take 3 defensive linemen
next year. Right. See them all who are going to be back
just
next
because
year.
It's such a deep draft with some of these positions that you just can't believe that guy's still there.
Wow, there's an edge pass rusher. Okay. Doesn't seem like a need, but TJ's not young, and those guys need
Herbig's
paid. And right.
2 years left on his deal. You can bring him in.
They don't grow on trees either. Right.
So
no, it's a good situation to be in.
Absolutely, but again, 3D chess. Don't look at things just 2-dimensionally. You have to look at all these moves like, okay, what's this do? What's the fallout from this kind of stuff?
Yeah.
So
cool.
Yeah, good signing. Wasn't on my radar for sure.
No. I even mentioned it, I think, late last week. I'm like, is Thornhill still out there? Because we were talking about the Browns and we were going through depth charts. And I'm like, where's he at? I thought he'd be signed by now.
Yeah, good player. Not a great player, but a good player.
No, he'll be
a valuable piece.
Yeah.
And
versatile,
again,
athletic.
If he's not one of the top 32 safeties in the league, he's probably in the top 36.
Yeah, I'd say he's top 40 or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, he's an NFL player all day long and would play a lot of snaps for any team.
Absolutely. But let's get to a break.
Cool.
He is the Matt Williamson. I am Dale Lolley. This is The Drive on the Steelers Audio Network, and we will be back with more right after this. And we are back. I am Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson. And while we're in break there, according to Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, the Steelers bringing back defensive lineman Isaiah Loudermilk.
Hits just keep coming here on The Drive, right? Tune in every day.
It's 1-year deal week.
It is 1-year deal week. And again, just picking up little bargains, filling out the roster. They generally keep 7 defensive linemen, and they've signed 2 basically in the last 2 days. I can't guarantee the Loudermilk will be on the opening day roster.
Again,
or not,
you hope to outdraft those guys. It's a 1-year deal, so there's not a lot of money involved.
And it's easy to go into the draft saying, we're going to take 2, but you might not.
Might not work out that way. Yeah.
Right. And you can live with him. He's a homegrown talent. He's fine. I don't have any problem with that at all. Again, you have cap space. It's not hurting your comp picks or anything like that.
You know how he fits in your defense. You know how you don't have to guess about what his work habits are or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
It's much like, they announced the signings of Ben Skoranek and Scotty Miller today. And people, oh, boy, Scotty Miller. He's not guaranteed to make the roster.
He might
it's
not
a
make
1-year
deal.
If you got signed to a 1-year deal you're not guaranteed of anything.
Right. I mean, like Thornhill's going to make the team.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a
Right.
higher roster move than Miller.
Skowronek got a 2-year deal. He's going to make the roster.
Team. Right. I don't know what kind of guarantee money Thornhill got or Skowronek, but I'm sure it's something.
Yeah.
Like, we like you. We're going to be around. I don't know about Ukele. I assume he'd be ahead on the depth chart.
It's a 1-year deal.
I think he's probably in the mix. I would think he's ahead of Loudermilk in terms of chances to make the team.
They signed him before they signed. I don't know. I can't.
I'm not sure on that.
He started 16 games last year for the Patriots. Now it was the Patriots, and they weren't terribly,
And
talented,
I'll be honest, I didn't know a ton about him, and his PFF grades are decent. He's quality run stuffer. He has some sacks. He's okay, but he's not a needle mover. I think he's
doesn't stop you from
guy. And right. It's not like they're out of the first round D line mix. No,
not at all.
Not even a little. Right.
Not at all.
In the mix.
Yeah. So, again, this is this is where I think over the years, this is where the Steelers have done most of their shopping.
Mm-hmm.
And it, again, I don't want to pay Macy's prices
Huge
for
prices,
my Target coat.
Mm-hmm. But you go get the Slays, and there wasn't a receiver to go get that was comparable to DK Metcalf.
Which is why you made the trade.
Godwin's not going anywhere.
And I'm sure,
anywhere.
The Steelers weren't even rumored to be in on that DK Metcalf
No.
stuff.
There was a lot of Packers talk.
We had talked about it.
Talk.
And we had worked out, we did some mock drafts where, okay, we're going to trade for DK Metcalf and see what that looks like if we give up that second-round pick or. But they weren't one of the teams that were supposedly in that market until they were.
Until they were, yeah. And so you never know what's looming out there. I mean, is there a quarterback move that we didn't see coming that could be out there? I don't know. I mean, that big shoe is just kind of looming in the air, but
That's the other thing. I mean, everybody's gotten so used to listening to the quote-unquote insiders that they'll believe anything. If you work for a network or you work for this outlet or that outlet, they'll believe anything that you put out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
You might not be an insider, but, they work for that network.
Yeah.
That's why I don't necessarily, if I talk about, I'll if Rappaport tweets it, if Jeremy Fowler tweets
put this
it.
one out, right.
These people that I know whose reputations are on the line here with this stuff.
If it's Schefter, it's like, lock it up.
Right.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But if it's somebody I haven't heard of or somebody that he's questionable, so I'm not going to even talk about it.
Or they're talking to or they're close to a deal with, that stuff.
There is so much Aaron Rodgers speculation out there.
Geez,
and that's what it is speculation at this point. To the best of my knowledge, Aaron Rodgers isn't talking to anybody. So anybody who says that they have inside information on the Aaron Rodgers situation, they're making it up.
Yeah, he's doing whatever he does. I mean, he lives in his own world, and good for him.
Yeah.
And I don't know that much about your business and reporting and breaking news and being an insider, but my hunch is just being around you guys and Pittsburgh media and national people in general, I bet the Steelers insiders like yourself are at least as dialed in, even as great as Schefter is, who I have the most respect for. But he has 32 teams. You know what I mean? Like, they might break news before you guys.
Well, so what people need to understand, and I get asked this a lot over the years, like, why do they break these stories, like these signings and stuff? Because the agents are telling them that stuff.
Because they want the world to know now.
They're not. Schefter's not on the phone all day long calling agents. They call him.
They call him, right? And he's got a bazillion followers, and before you know it,
and that's what they do now. It used to be.
But you might get scoop. Well, they really like this guy, or they, people that
back in the day, when I first started with this stuff, you would call the agent up and say, hey, so I'm work with, whatever outlet you're at, and I wanted to ask you about this guy or that guy, and they would, okay, I got to, and there were some times like I can remember I had this Santonio Holmes signing before anybody else, to his rookie deal. Because he was holding out in training camp, and I just happened to call the agent when
the timing was right.
The timing was perfect.
Okay,
and so I had it first.
Yeah,
big deal. Now that wouldn't happen.
Yeah, they would just call Schefter.
They would just call Schefter. They call one of these guys, or they text three of them and just get it out there.
Yeah. I mean, the world's different now.
Which is why you see these guys now tweeting out when they send out a tweet or an X or whatever you want to call it now. Deal was negotiated by such and such.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's big. I really noticed that this year.
It's a payback for the agent for giving you the.
And then he gets 2 more
tip.
clients.
Yeah,
right, exactly. The kid coming out of
that's
college.
That's what the agents get out of it. Oh,
and everybody wins.
He
right.
did this deal for this guy. What can he get me?
I guess a better spot is even like training camp. Like if we're on the drive and it's like, man, I really think they love this 4th round tight end. He's going to make the team. He might even be better than they thought. Schefter wouldn't know that.
Wouldn't know that.
I mean, he's not.
We
there
were on.
every day,
I guarantee you, we were on Jaylen Warren before
Perfect
anybody.
example. Yeah, I was trying to think of an example. Like,
We were raving.
No one even knew he was.
We were raving about Jaylen Warren in minicamp.
Mm-hmm. I remember watching him. Just my eyes going, he's really good.
Yeah.
And then you guys that are talking to people are like, oh, they think he's really good too. You know,
Yeah.
like it was. I mean, it didn't take an expert scout to see him being a high quality player.
I remember seeing that with James Harrison his rookie year,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
like,
yeah.
what's going on with this Harrison kid? He's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, he's pretty good. He just needs to listen.
Yeah, he's a little bit of a loose cannon. But if we can push that the right
If we
direction,
can channel that energy a little bit.
maybe he'll win some defensive player of the year. As opposed to getting cut and not.
But yeah, that's what you see when you're on. When you have boots on the ground.
Yeah,
Those kind of things. Then you go and you talk to people and you ask them about certain guys, and you get the.
Yeah, or Adam and Ian, those guys can't be boots on the ground.
Right.
You know, all over the place.
Like
But
when
they
I
are
say the
getting-
Steelers really liked what Troy Falatano was doing last year in training camp, I'm telling you, the Steelers really liked what Troy Falatano was doing in training camp last year.
They weren't thrilled about his injury. To say
They
the
were
least.
not.
Right,
No.
right. No. So they have high hopes.
Yeah.
And again, think about if he becomes that guy and is one of the better left tackles in the league.
Right tackle.
What? Right. Okay. I mean, what an asset that is. I mean, it's just huge.
Yeah.
You get that in the middle of the first round. If that turns out to come to fruition, he stays healthy and
Even if
lives
he's,
with his
if he's a top 10 right tackle in
It's
the
a
league.
massive
Huge.
upgrade. Right.
Huge.
Yep.
Anyways.
Foundational players.
Absolutely. And you want to keep building that foundation
Mm-hmm.
until you get your quarterback.
And
it's
then you
the foundation
sprinkle
built.
in
Then
the
you-
Thornhills and the Louder Milks.
Then you
and,
build the deck
know,
on the back of the house, you
right,
redo the
right,
kitchen,
right, yeah.
you know, that
Little
kind of stuff.
something, yeah.
But it doesn't do you any good to put that on a poor foundation and
No.
you build all that nice stuff on it and then it caves in on
Keep
you.
drafting and land a couple more this year.
Matt, that's going to do it for the show today.
We had a lot going on today.
We did.
This was a barn burner.
Absolutely. It was Monday. Lots of stuff going
I
on
guess,
around the
yeah.
league and lots of stuff to continue to talk about. We'll get into that more as the week continues. But for today, that's going to do it. For my partner, Matt Williamson, for Justin Miller here on site, making sure we sound okay, and for Tyler Vittmeyer, making sure our YouTube video gets out there. Check that out. We also added a little best of on Saturday this
Stepping
week.
up. Yep.
So you
Get
can
the best of CD.
you can check out the best of on there as well. I'm Dale Lolley. We thank you for listening to this edition of The Drive on the Steelers Audio Network.
Steelers football happens here. The Pittsburgh Steelers Audio Network.